I don't know why when we start a podcast, I always channel Stephen Fry. I just want to say good evening, good evening. Like, you know what the way he says it in QI. That's the first thing that comes to mind. But then I realize I've done it a million times, and it's a bit more than an homage at that point.
Yeah. I always just feel the need to pull funny faces, which people can witness on the video version. Like, welcome everyone. I'm John.
I'm Andrea.
We are voices in the dark. We are learning how to human, so you don't have to. No, so that you can come along too.
Outsource your morality, philosophy, and thinking to us.
That's right. We've got a few mission statements for you, and they all involve signing up to Patreon. And that will change your life because we are self-help hucksters. No, hopefully most of that is false. This is the next episode of the Modern Stoic series, and it's from Letter 44 of Seneca's, which is on Philosophy and Pedigrees. So before you struggle to contain your excitement, let me give you a sense of what it's actually about. And it's surprisingly on the money when it comes to, I think, our modern experience of chasing happiness whilst feeling generally like we're never there. And Seneca's got a lot of points about this, even without living in a culture dedicated to advertising and showing you idealized versions of people's lives that you then feel inadequate to by comparison.
It's interesting to see that he singled this out as a problem before social media and constant TV.
So if social media and constant TV are doing anything, I think they're just like exacerbating an underlying insecurity that we have when we compare ourselves to other people. Yeah. And it also gets into why chasing after recognition and reputation is a losing game too. And thankfully also some ideas about what we should do instead if we want to live a meaningful life rather than just saying it's hopeless. So thanks, Seneca. Into that. If you want to come over and talk to us about what you think about this episode, do you have a self-help problem? Are you a self-help addict? Come and talk to us on the Facebook group, which continues to grow. I'm excited to see.
Yes. We should probably give it a unique URL so we can talk about it without saying you have to go here and then click on here and click on there. But you can find it through the Facebook page. It is a linked group, which is on the, I think, right-hand side sidebar. You can click on if you go to the Facebook page, which is, of course,
facebook.com/VInTheD.
That's right.
And we are also on Twitter, if we bother to check it, at VInTheD, Instagram at vinthed.pod. Need to talk to you later about some of the people who've been getting in touch there. If you want to get in touch with us, you can directly on Instagram, and a lot of people who do. It's really nice to hear from you and be in touch. If, however, your message is, I've written a book and you should talk about it on your podcast, and then expect me to read a book without even telling me anything about it.
Yeah. What we will do is not even buy your book. We will steal your book. And set it on fire on camera on our YouTube channel.
Because we like to care and share that caring with everybody else. Thanks to everyone who supports the show. The fact that you listen, and if you share it around and we can grow those listener numbers, we can get more cool, interesting people on the show. And if you can spare us a couple of minutes to do a review on iTunes, helps a lot.
It does. It does. It's one of the things that the iTunes algorithm rewards the most.
Yeah. Pleasuring. And there is Patreon, of course, where you can buy us the equivalent of a coffee, a pint, or, if you're really rich, you could buy us a house a month if you want.
That would be awesome.
The option is down.
Can you like have that high of?
I don't know. I mean, maybe just a small
house,
maybe a shed,
a cottage somewhere in Scotland.
Yeah,
a month.
A month. Now just get this increasing network and Airbnb it out, and then I could, dedicate my time fully to making this podcast, which would be wonderful. So help me fund an Airbnb cabin in the woods empire. Thank you. Now,
onwards and upwards to happiness.
Yeah.
Which ours is linked to our Patreon support.
Directly. So Seneca is basically saying to Lucilius, first off, stop being such a pissy bitch. You are again insisting to me that you are a nobody and saying that nature in the first place and fortune in the second have treated you too scurvily, and this in spite of the fact that you have it in your power to separate yourself from the crowd and rise to the highest human happiness.
I feel like Lucilius here is that sort of the consummate, I'm such a worthless cunt, blah blah blah, instead of being via instant messaging to his, you know, other 14-year-old girlfriend. In this case, he was writing by hand, by candlelight, and sending it to a 60-year-old man. Like, and this, you know, clearly Seneca's like, get your shit together.
Yeah, he's saying, oh, I'm a nobody, and that's just because of my nature, and also I've just had a lot of bad luck, and everything goes against me, and wah.
He blames both what's happened to him and where he's come from.
Now, I think a lot of us have, whilst we're mocking Lucilius, have fallen victim into at least thinking that sometimes. Where maybe not you, I don't know. I definitely have him in both those ways. Not because I had a particularly awful upbringing or anything, but it's easy to look into the past and go, I just never fell in with a cool crowd who had similar interests, so I could have ended up being an accomplished musician by now. Like that wish for the past. As well as, I think, the even more common of just being like, nothing goes my way. Nothing goes my way.
Yeah, but, I mean, to counter both points, I guess, if you want something bad enough, we know that you can get it regardless of your circumstances. So it's kind of a weird scenario where, you know, even there was like teenagers that had no way to become the top basketball champion of the world or whatever, but they did. You know, they found the way to do it, even though they had no peers or money, blah, blah, blah. And the other, what was the second point, sorry?
Things not going your way.
Oh, and nothing ever goes anyone's way, really. It takes a lot of effort for anything to go your way. The reason why some people seem to have things go very smoothly for them is because I think they can hire or have other people to slog through the things not going their way. And to them, they're sort of one layer above, and they don't see, you know, their PA scrambling and yelling at Amazon for not delivering things on time. They just get it.
Yeah, I guess if you can move yourself enough away from the process that way. But I think there's also a problem of never quite valuing when you did achieve the thing that you wanted to achieve. Because, I mean, I'm immediately thinking of my book, which is finished, and it's the final proofread, and just need to change some formatting. And that's a big achievement. It's a huge thing in my life. And yet it's hard to feel that it isn't still a struggle to get it finalized, to get it out on time as I promised it would be. And then it's like the next chapter, fittingly enough, is, okay, now I got to market this shit and tell people about it and all. It's like, when does it end? Well, it doesn't. I guess it's like happiness, as we're going to get to. There isn't an end point where you're toasting with margaritas on the top of a mountain as the sun sets beautifully in the background.
I always like my, is it a metaphor? I don't know. My brushing your teeth sort of concept.
Yeah,
I relate a few things to that. So changing it in this circumstance would be like, you're asking me, when's the last time I get to brush my teeth? Well, the day before you die.
Well, this would not be a metaphor. It would be an analogy.
That's what I was looking for. I ran completely empty when I looked for that word in the back of my head. It was gone.
It's filed so close to anal. I would have thought it'd be right there.
That was the problem. I had to slough through.
I think either.
Through several decades of archive worth of anal-related material to look for an analogy.
Try and find. Yeah, you're right. It's a process. It's not a straightforward outcome. Although there is, maybe the problem is also not valuing when there is a definitive outcome, which is hold book in hands.
Yeah, because those are so transient. They are by definition instant. They last only a fraction of a second. Whereas the process is constant and ever more.
So when I got the proof of the book, for checking and so on, so it's not quite the final thing, but it's still the first time it existed in my hands as a physical thing. I had this two streams of consciousness going in my mind. That one is this has been built up a lot. I was expecting I would probably cry. Is that going to happen? Oh, okay, apparently it is happening. But am I forcing that to happen? Because I thought that it should happen. And then, just sort of gave up to the emotion of the moment. But it didn't last very long, because immediately the point of this was, what's wrong with it? What's wrong with the cover or the layout or anything? It's still a checking thing. So it was a very transient moment. Like you say, it's okay, moment, now, get this shit fixed.
Yeah. It's if you're going to be some kind of entrepreneur, you have to accept that that's how you'll feel most of the time when you're in the startup level. When you're a one-man band, 99% of your time will be spent going, why isn't this working? That's just the default. The moment you have a team, then that gets shared around.
But then the people we tend to admire most in creative spaces, they're always moving to the next thing anyway. And by the time something is released, a product, a book, it's long since sort of been complete from the creator's perspective. Now you're just seeing like X number of months later that it's finally hit the public. And then you get this surreal disconnect where people start asking you like, oh, I read that thing that you wrote. Yeah, I was really interested in whatever. And you're like, I don't really remember anymore or care because that was a year ago or something. So I think we just need to embody the deep wisdom of the Foo Fighters here. Done, on to the next one. Done, on to the next one. So thank you for the Foo Fighters. I can't say it. I'm trying to thank the Foo Fighters and say thank you for your wisdom. You're as good as Seneca.
Where did you get stuck?
I was having trouble saying the words in the right order and not tripping over Foo Fighters. Thanks, Foo Fighters. That'll do. So there's a problem of waiting to have made it here. But Seneca, or rather Lucilius, is focusing way too much on how people treat him, I think, which is a dangerous game. Like, when will I feel I've made it? People need to tell me that I've made it. I don't know. Seneca goes on to say, if there is any good philosophy, it is this, that it never looks into pedigrees. All men, if traced back to their original source, spring from the gods. So it's kind of back to our episode, a few episodes back, I think, about the God within, which seemed to bring Stoicism very close to Buddhism. But Seneca's basically saying, in a very powerful message, you are already enough. You are already complete, except that on that basis, you then do things with that. Instead of thinking, there's pieces of me missing, it's more like, okay, assume that you're already you. Now let's go and grow and build from this base.
It's a funny concept to me when I think about it, because I feel it's more of a, you have all the tools, but maybe you don't have yet. Like it's like having a pile of building materials and go, it's already a skyscraper. Well, no, not yet. You do have to build it, but you have all the materials you need. And if you don't, you have the kind of physical presence and mind that goes, oh, I am missing 80 tons of steel. Let me go buy some, or let me go figure out how to get around that problem. And that's what you have. The ability to become who you need to be. You're not that person already. You are able to be that person. Like you have everything inside of you required to get there, I guess, rather than being there. I don't know.
There was a quote from our friend Eric Godzi I saw him post on Facebook today that says maybe the most important idea to embrace if you want to become who you could be is, it may not be your fault that you are who you are, but it is your responsibility to become who you could be.
That's much closer to that. Good.
So thanks, Eric.
Good.
Good. I like it. Chasing reputation and fame is a pretty obvious losing game that I think we all know, but we then kind of forget in the day-to-day. Because it's nice if someone says that you're good at something. It's nice to feel sort of recognized. And this is one of the reasons that unless they're a big superstar already, you'll be amazed if you wanted to like write to an expert professor in something and ask their opinion and, you know, show not just like something dumb, show that you know a little about their work. Or even better, if you're like, would you mind doing an interview on my podcast or whatever? They'll be like, oh my God, somebody wants to talk to me. I'm important. I'm an authority. Usually I just get shitty emails from the administration departments in the university because they want to feel like they're valued, and they're not.
We're all hungry for recognition, and it's not I don't think it's a bad thing, because it's ultimately it's one of the few things that validates your existence. Because in what I mean by that is, how do you know you exist? Because you can, as Voltaire kind of got to the point of I think therefore I am, that only gets you to the point where you kind of assume that you exist because you think. But you can't be sure that everything else exists. And it's not just a figment of your imagination, which is the problem of that. I think therefore I am, but I don't know if anyone else thinks, and therefore they are. And when you find yourself mirrored in others, and kind of there's a feeling of kinship based on them praising who you are or understanding what you tried to achieve, that is sort of a validation of souls. You feel like you're not alone.
Yeah, I think that's at the core of it. But as soon as you said Voltaire, I was like, I think that's wrong, and I just checked.
It's not Voltaire, is it?
Descartes. It's okay. Now you'll.
I'm
maybe
not firing on all cylinders today.
It's fine. This is not a show off your ancient philosophical knowledge.
Thing is, podcast. I know that fact. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Whatevs. But I had something else to say about that. But now the moment has passed, apparently. I was too busy going, let me correct you, instead of going with the thought. Praise doesn't make you better. Oh yeah, what I was thinking of is, I think that the recognition or positive reinforcement, maybe we've just come to put way too much weight on it, where we think it's like a huge, you've just been awarded a title belt kind of thing, and that changes your life, rather than surely from childhood or tribal style living onwards, it's just a process whereby the people around you are like, yeah, good job. Just sort of learning and growing and getting a little bit of training in the things that are considered good and positive and the things that aren't. But when we now, maybe awards can be a toxic thing if it's not done from a community perspective, and instead is a bigger organization like a country or an institution putting you on a pedestal, because pedestals are lonely. I don't think that everyone should get a medal in the race either. I just think that if we could just value the simple bits of positive reinforcement and remember to tell each other, I really appreciated this or that. I'd say in a relationship setting, I really like sometimes at the end of the day to just sort of look back and tell Jamie, I really appreciated when you did this thing today, or it felt really cool to have that experience with you. And just pause to value the stuff that's happened. And it doesn't have to have a big medal at the end.
It's weird. It's this heartwarming thing. And I think, I take it back to what I was saying before. The reason I feel it happens is because your own mind on its own essentially becomes a feedback loop, like a microphone getting too close to a speaker. Because it's just a signal going nowhere and going back into itself. And that's why isolation tends to breed either megalomania or insanity in most people. But even just being around people without being feeling like you're being understood is the same concept. You become only your thoughts. There's nothing to reset the 0 point between your virtual internal reality and the outward reality. Whereas someone going, I really appreciated that thing you did earlier, and being surprised by that fact. It's like, oh, they noticed me. I am real. I exist. Takes you out of your mind and into reality. And it's a resetting point for presence and life.
I think if I was locked in isolation, I would go mad. It would be like go mad and cheesecake.
Go mad.
That's all it would be, just cheesecake and madness.
I think that's the
doesn't sound so
let's
bad.
Let's tweet that out.
Num.
Tweet this quote out if you're watching this episode.
Cheesecake and madness. Seneca's first bit of advice about all this, I do not like, because he basically says, pull yourself together, mate. You're better off than some other people, because Lucilius is a political figure with some power and others have no such power and opportunity and public presence. And I'm just not a big fan of these arguments, of the comparison. So it's like, well, you're doing better than someone starving in Africa. true, but I don't feel that it really helps me if people make statements like that. I think I have my own situation and I want to understand it and experience it better. So to just say, well, it could be worse, you could be on fire, doesn't really help if you've got a broken heart.
No. But perhaps Seneca knew that Lucilius is a little bitch on this, on which this argument would have worked.
Could be. I had a second thought I wonder what you think about. I wonder if I'm just sort of missing something in the mix here, that it can be if there's just too much involvement in my own life and my own circumstances, and I do know that a change of scene and climate would make a massive difference. So it's like, yeah, it's now you're just trapped and locked in this. So you do need to like zoom out and consider comparatively the rest of the world. But if it's about perspective, then I feel like it needs to be a perspective shift within the realm of direct experience that's tangible, that I can grasp. Abstract person starving in Africa doesn't do anything for me in terms of how I might feel better about myself, but maybe thinking about other positive times in my life or times that have been worse, or just doing something enjoyable and pleasurable can create the feeling of the difference.
But happiness is another concept which is unfortunately relative. As a social animal, we can only be as happy. We can only be happy if we perceive to be ourselves at least as happy as the average happiness of our peers.
Meh.
If you feel happy, but you notice that everybody else that you relate to is 10% happier than you are, you will become sad. That's just how our mind works.
But okay, but it doesn't. How does it work the other way? If you're surrounded by people who generally seem to be unhappy, does that make you feel happier? Doesn't it rather drag you down?
Well, it doesn't make you feel happier by default. Mm-hmm. But if you feel happy and you perceive everybody else to not be quite as happy as you are, you feel grateful.
Do I? Or do I I think I start internalizing the unhappiness of everyone around me?
Well, that's okay. So if you direct friendship and relationships are being unhappy around you, even when you're happy, you will slowly get down to their level. I'm talking more about peer groups.
Okay.
So direct contact with someone that's unhappy is draining because you're trying to be happy with them and they're not responding back. And so the energy level goes down. But, the whole, I don't know, like if out of your group of friends, you're doing really well, most people will feel really good about that. And that's why you have social signaling on social media. People are posting their holiday photos and so on because they see everybody else doing it. And so therefore they feel slightly unhappy in their situation unless they can match what they're seeing. It's a social byproduct of being an ape that requires sort of everybody else. Well, it requires social integration. Now, I'm not saying that the opposite is the key to happiness, but if everybody else around you seems happier than you are, your own happiness will only go so far. In most cases.
I get that. I think there's another perspective, at least when it comes to like the social media front, which is to stop trying to join the same drama, would like zoom out a bit and become the observer of these strange creatures doing their different things, which a couple of friends of mine, they tend to be like the voyeurs of Facebook. They never post, but they observe. Which, if you can like adopt that position, and I have to an extent, because I used to get much more drawn into, I need to argue about this or do that, like because someone writes something I don't like. And then it's much better now because I don't get drawn into it and just have an unpleasant exchange or whatever of just going, so that's what is riling them up at the moment. Okay, interesting that they're doing that. I don't think anything has... it would surprise me if any significant disagreement had ever been resolved through an exchange of Facebook comments.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
I'm surprised we haven't had another Holocaust as a result of Facebook comments.
I'm not sure how I follow. Well, one of the great things about the internet is it's mostly self-contained. The outrage or offense or it tends to stay online. It has to go real far for someone to then go, that's it, grabbing their shotgun, driving somewhere and killing someone.
If I'd had a shotgun, I'm not guaranteeing that in the past I might not. Get on my bike.
Although we're starting to see bigger trends, like, well, without social media, the Me Too movement wouldn't have been possible. The same way that some of the, you know, sorry, go on.
Would you like to share your Me Too hashtag joke?
Oh, it wasn't mine, but I saw it online. I thought it was quite hilarious. And the person commented, does the post-millennial generation not know that the hashtag symbol used to be called the pound? I feel it's like very inappropriate for everybody to be, you know, tagging everyone with pound me too.
It's so awful. Pound me too. Like, this is the problem. Stop
They're
tagging
asking for it.
Yeah, totally asking
Everyone's
for
asking for it.
Oh God. So Seneca's point though seems to be more that we all have the possibility within us to do great shit, and that the doing of it can make us great if that's what we want. So he says, but a noble mind is free to all men. According to this test, we may all gain distinction. Philosophy neither rejects nor selects anyone. Its light shines for all. Socrates was no aristocrat. Cleanthes worked at a well and served as a hired man watering a garden. Philosophy did not find Plato already a nobleman, it made him one. Why then should you despair of becoming able to rank with men like these? And then he adds, Plato says, every king springs from a race of slaves, and every slave has had kings among his ancestors. So I think they're good examples, but often it ignores the fact that a lot of good fortune in people's background definitely can sort of have cumulative gains. Plus, there's so many... There can be exceptions to the rule that... I was thinking this earlier when you said, like, people who shouldn't ever have made it to be a great basketball player, but they did. Well, they're great exceptions, but I think it can be pretty delusional for us to then go, well, if they can do it, then I definitely can too.
Yes, and there's a good quote from Ratatouille. Mm-hmm. So throughout the movie, there's this Chef Gusteau that people reference that say anyone can cook. Mm-hmm. That's his like line. And the evil character, or evil, the bad guy, which is the critic, you know, disparages this comment. Like, no, this is not true. But at the end, when he gets, like during the climax of the movie, when the rat wows this critic and he tastes the best meal ever and he's really happy about it, but realizes that a rat cooked it. Right at the end, the voiceover says something. It's not that everybody can cook, but a great cook could come from anywhere, any background.
That's a great distinction. So it's not that you should assume that your background and situation definitely writes off the possibility, but it also, we can be so silly in short-circuiting the logic and thinking like it's absolutely possible for me to become a great chef or something. It's like, well, you could find out. And I think the best way to look at the people who are the exceptions or the real standouts in whatever field is to look to them for inspiration, not as a model that we could just emulate directly and copy everything they do and wear the same watch as them and all of this shit. Instead, just go, wow, look at the dynamic energy that they've brought to bear on things that were interesting and exciting for them. Maybe that gives me a boost. I mean, silly as it may sound, checking out The Rock's Instagram makes me feel good. I'm just like, look at him killing it. I should go kill something. It sounds wrong, but you get what I mean, because he's just doing his thing, and I'm like, I don't want to do his thing. I mean, it sounds exhausting for one thing, but seeing someone rocking their thing, I think, can be very inspiring for you to go and do something totally different.
Yeah. And one of the distinctions I think we should make here, I think Seneca tries to say, is also that, you know, a noble mind, he speaks of a noble mind specifically, can come from anywhere. So maybe you're not going to be successful at all, but that doesn't stop you from being someone with an aligned internal morality and authenticity that makes you feel good and happy about who you are and what you've achieved philosophically in terms of growth and enlightenment. You can be happy and enlightened as a bum on the street, potentially, That you don't it doesn't mean you will be, but you could be just as much as a billionaire could get there. Actually, I think it's probably easier if you're somewhere in the middle of the road to be happy. Both the extremes are less likely, but probably less likely to the same degree. But the point is that it doesn't matter where you've come from in terms of achieving internal, not consistency, I don't know what the right word is, but a noble mind.
So I was trying to find a way to segue into some sort of like, I'm still Jenny from the block, remembering where I came from, but it didn't really come together.
I'm still Senny from the forum.
I'm still Senny from the forum. We'll go with that. So you also want, I don't know where it should come in here, but I really want you to talk about it before we put the mics on. You said, on the other hand, whilst we might see that there's great potential in everyone, you have a bad habit of maybe seeing too much.
It's not that, I don't think I see more than that's there. As Philip Buchanan said, that his gift is to see people for what they're capable of. I feel like I got not necessarily as much as he does. I don't know. Can you compare gifts? But I've often felt that way, that I could see the good or the potential in people. The problem is when you focus on it and not see the rest and not realize that until they decide to grow and fulfill that potential, it might be a losing battle that'll only make you depressed and angry, and they might never get there. And do you really want to put that mission on yourself to be there for them no matter what? Like, unless they are a significant other or someone who, like, it should be reserved for very, very few people in your life. The whole, like, no, I'll keep helping them no matter what.
You can't be a mentor to everyone who comes into your life, although some people seem to sort of expect it and start putting the weight on you to do so.
Like immediately, the moment you show any kind of mentor sort of quality to someone, they offload the responsibility of growth onto you.
Yeah, a friend of mine who's just leaving a job and is like helping out a bit to find a replacement for the job, had a friend recommend somebody, and so this person speaking to my friend going, have you got any tips on how I should like present the CV, or what are some important points to hit? And because my friend has been helpful, the guy has done that horrible thing where he then is like, oh, okay, I need to email you 3 times a day asking for irrelevant points of clarification, and I'm going to be phoning you, and I'm going to keep ignoring the advice that you give me. Like, you've told me to do this and I produce something different, and then I'm just going to keep hassling you. So that becomes really unpleasant. Like, you help someone, they basically ignored your advice, and then they think that you're their go-to helpline constantly available. And it's no good. So thankfully, my friend is like shutting the door and saying, okay, well, next email I get, I'll send a reply 1 week later. Yeah. I can retrain this person. Like, no, you didn't just get the keys to my house and my time.
Yeah, and I've now restricted the sphere of help I give. I help a few people I truly care about, and those that help themselves. No one else.
So you're like a benevolent God, helping those who help themselves.
Well, you know, like, for example, when I say to someone, oh, that sounds like a really cool project, I'd love to help you out. And I give them like an example of what I could help them do. Let's say, you know, I'd love to help you shoot a video for it and blah, blah, blah. I then never follow up. If they contact me and they're like, oh, hi, are you free Monday? Let's do that thing you said. Great. If not, fuck it. Bye.
It's not for you to chase them to offer something.
Yeah, but people expect it. Like, I very rarely get taken up on even really cool things that I offer people. I offer once, and then it's up to them to make it happen. The way that I would if someone said to me, you know, like if someone said to me, oh, your podcast is really cool. I'd love to market it, maybe make you appear on, I don't know, Channel 4 talking about it. Like, I'd be ringing them every day. Like, is it tomorrow? Like, when can I come in? What should I say?
We want to talk to Kathy Newman.
Like, you know, but I would chase it up. I would make it happen.
That's the hustle.
Yeah, like the moment someone opens the door, like I'm in, like I'm sitting in their living room.
You're not seeing you like pissing on the floor. It's like, this is my space. getting swifty.
But people don't. They want, most people, the immediate moment they feel help coming, they revert to parent-toddler relationship. It's that kind of falling on your knees, and the parent goes, oh, let me get you up. And they just stretch their arms out and wait. They don't put their hands on the floor and try to lift themselves up or like extend a hand so they can pull themselves up. They relinquish all responsibility immediately, because I think they just go back to that.
That's true. And it can certainly feel like, oh, a relief, someone else is taking over. But really, that's usually not what the dynamic is. It's more like, okay, you're learning to ride a bike. I'm going to give you a little push to get you going. There you go. Now cycle. Oh, you fell off. Your problem. Fuck you, kid. It's good that I don't have kids. But I think those are quite character forming moments of when you do go, oh, I am going to stand up and go and do this again on my own. When I had my first like surfing lessons, oh, the emotional intensity of it all. I was so fucking frustrated. But I didn't want help. I mean, not that I could get like too much direct help. There's only so much people can help you with. Like I took the advice, whatever, but really it was, okay, I listened, now I'm going to go over here. And I'm going to, with like the face of total thunder and frustration, keep doing it until I get better. And I didn't want anyone near me at that point, like trying to offer like, oh, you're doing so well. No, fuck you. I don't want your help right now. It's between me, the board, and the sea. And I felt quite like, although there was obviously a bit of foot stamping, childish petulance going on there, I was kind of proud of myself, like, as though I was outside my body going, oh, I seem to be going back into the sea. I guess I'm going to keep doing this until I get better. And that was cool.
Yeah, it's an interesting, it's a very powerful dynamic if you can hold on to it. If you can relate it to other situations. Like you're struggling with your significant other because they're in a bad place and they keep kind of being distant and defensive. That's the sea pushing you off, and the reaction would be like, oh, fuck it, I'll just go back to my shack. But like, if you want to, I mean, it always has to be conscious and informed and not fall into a loop. But everything can be the sea beating you down, and you have to stand back up if you want to get to the other side.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with that, but it would be tricky to make that a sort of general rule if it was a relationship thing, because sometimes you are just going to drown if you keep going back and they're pushing you away. Yeah, do your best, but also don't drown in the process. But
also identify what standing up on the board is. Because standing up in the board in that case, for this particular person, this particular situation, might be drawing a line.
It might be saying, go fuck yourself, come back when you've got yourself together.
The assumption is that, oh, it's being nice and accommodating. Not necessarily. But maybe you have to figure out, what is the thing I need to do to get the result that I want?
And, it's anal sex on a surfboard. Got to practice a lot. It's
not enough to stand up.
Well, but you don't saying stand up. You can kneel down. It's a bit easier. Maybe it's a paddleboard.
Okay.
It's a bit wider.
Right.
It's a bit, I managed to fall off paddleboards. That was hilarious. Like, oh, this is the easy thing. You don't even need to get wet. Boom. So elegant. So what if Lucilius had a different background? Seneca says, suppose then that you were not a Roman knight, but a freedman, as in ex-slave. You might nevertheless, by your own efforts, come to be the only free man amid a throng of gentlemen. How, you ask? Simply by distinguishing between good and bad things without patterning your opinion from the populace. You should look not to the source from which these things come, but to the goal towards which they tend. So the aim is to look forward where you're going and not where you're coming from, because I think there's a big danger of becoming trapped in the stories, like I'm this sort of person, or I've always had this problem, or this is the biggest, like I would never be able to do that because look at my background. And it's always painful to see people, and hear people with like the deep insecurities that because they were brought up on say, in a rough part of town, that they'll never be accepted or thought as to be as good as anyone else. Well, if you're internalizing that to the point where you kind of believe it, you're creating the problem yourself or sustaining it. Even if some people are dickish and snooty to you, if you agree that there's any validity to that statement, then you're falling under the story too.
Yeah, I mean, and ultimately, let's say, I don't know, you're a rapper that's made it big and feels upset that, old New York money doesn't like you at their parties, even though you're just as rich as they are. Like, does it really matter?
Yeah, what is the goal?
Like, why? Why do you want these people to actually like you? It's even better that they're begrudgingly allowing you to be in their circles, even though they don't like you. Surely that means you've made it even more. I mean, it's easy to accept someone you like. It's kind of annoying to have to be like, I can't really say anything.
Yeah,
that's probably more better.
And you can piss on their carpet and leave your statement. Maybe I'm going to call this episode "Piss on the Carpet."
Piss on the carpet.
Yeah.
I feel like our titles are funny, but they don't necessarily explain why someone should listen.
Sorry, this pollen count is crazy today. No, but I'm also pretty fucking tired of like titles that are the 10 things that you need to know if you want to have these experiences in your life unpacked. Okay, it's Googleable, but go fuck yourself.
Yeah, but I mean, what is the goal here?
Well, unfortunately, maybe we've got different goals. You want it to be more searchable and findable, and I'm like, I want a title that I can feel seems like a decent bit of writing or expression, or like an artistic expression. Okay, so you can come up with the titles then. Look what you just did for yourself.
No.
Now you've got to find SEO optimized titles.
I think I'd rather shoot myself in the balls.
I mean, that's another reason why I don't like do these Googleable titles, because it's a farce.
Well, it's, unfortunately, it's like having a nice cover for your book, so that when people look at it, they pick it up, and you're trying to get them to open the first page and read what it's about, so then they go, oh, I should buy this.
Yes, you're completely right. But, the other part of me is like, well, people should be less retarded.
Yeah, that would be nice.
And that's not a possible wish. No. So what Seneca has then really lays into this modern cult of, I mean, he's not doing it about the modern cult, but the cult of #happiness, because it's not a destination, it's a process and our experience as we go along. He says, where then lies the mistake, since all men crave the happy life? It is that they regard the means for producing happiness as happiness itself, and while seeking happiness, they are really fleeing from it. So the reality of chasing after happiness is that you're chasing it away. You think you're seeking it, but that's because you're constantly going, it has to be better, or I guess it's not here, because you're not stopping to smell the roses.
But it's one of those things that you can't look for, because the act of looking for it precludes you from achieving it, because the achievement of it is being in the moment, and you can't be in the moment if you're looking for happiness.
Happiness turns up by accident. There's a cool psychology book, very funny, called Stumbling on Happiness. And I think that's what it is. You're like, fuck, I feel really happy right now. That's great. Enjoy it. But that's how it happens.
And I think ultimately it's an attitude and a choice. And it's fine to accept that there are many situations where you will be unable to choose to be happy. But it's not because you can't. You can be happy even though your whole family is being murdered. It's possible. You can be happy even though you're completely alone in the world. Some people are. We choose not to be because we focus or don't want to be happy alone. Some people don't want to be happy alone. Some people don't want to be happy in a relationship. But ultimately, deep down, it is a choice. It's a hard choice to move away from, because you're essentially fighting your nature to try to be happy with situations in which you don't want to be happy in.
Yeah, it is more of a disposition, I guess. But there are tools like meditation for one thing, or having a fitness routine, or doing things that show that you care about yourself, signaling to yourself that you do care, and it's kind of virtuous cycle that can help you end up more in that position. Definitely something that I struggle with, but it tends to correlate pretty closely. If I'm like, oh, I feel so shit right now, and someone goes, so have you been going to the gym regularly? No, I suck. I haven't been. How have you been eating? I've just been eating shit. I don't understand. Why do I feel so bad? I haven't been meditating. Fuck you all.
And I guess happiness is a feeling, right? Which ultimately is a physical reaction to a state of mind, which means happiness is hormone levels and how fast your heart is beating, like, and that's a state that requires being healthy, physically fit. You know, like if you're dying, it's harder to be happy. Not impossible, but it is harder, because if, for example, you're constantly in pain or you haven't taken care of yourself, like it will affect your ability to feel the feeling that your thoughts associate with happiness.
I mean, happiness might also be my boyfriend chained to a bed covered in cheesecake. It might be that. I'm going to find out for you guys, and I'll report back.
But it's not the situation that's happy.
No.
It's the feeling that it provokes in you when you are in that situation.
Double lust.
I imagine it would be very disconcerting to have those feelings in the absence. And I think there's people with certain kinds of brain damage that feel happy all the time, or genetic condition that makes them generally really, really happy, but they can be manipulated more easily. I forget the name. There's a specific condition which is really interesting.
I think I read about this at some point.
They're just constantly happy no matter what's happening, and they're positive. It's like a Pollyanna syndrome, basically.
It's like what Americans pretend to be to each other.
To our American listeners.
Yeah, to our American listeners. I mean,
why are you so fucking happy?
Well, I mean...
Well, if they're listening to us, they're probably not.
I've had it, they're miserable.
Not because they're listening to us, but the kind of audience.
It's the kind of thing I've had really kind of interesting conversations with, American people I've met in passing or friends of mine, where you kind of try... I think a lot of Europeans kind of will have had these conversations where you're like, there's this sort of superficiality to all of this, hey, have a nice day, oh, how are you, kind of thing. And provided that, you know, you're speaking to an American person who's prepared to, like, have a think about that, I think the most common response I've got is, I think you're right. And it's not that people are going around just sort of lying, or they're doing it out of malice, or they're, like, actively thinking this is not true. It's that the kind of default social performance of how to be polite and sociable is quite exaggerated compared to in some other countries. And I think that exaggeration can cause potential problems where there's this further disconnect of, like, I'm really not as happy as I am pretending to be when I'm speaking to the barista.
Right.
And that clash internally can really hurt.
Well, especially because it has become a social norm, and therefore deviating from it is seen as a form of antisocial behavior. So being sad or depressed in America tends to be looked down more upon than anywhere else, which is why their consumption of antidepressants is way higher than anywhere else that I know of, at least. I might be wrong here.
So much opium. Well, I mean, there's an opium epidemic.
As well as, you know, like, and tricyclic antidepressants, Prozac, and all those other things, they just eat them like candy, because being unhappy is seen as a condition.
Yeah, that is part of the problem. Thinking so, I was reading a bunch about opium recently, as one does, and in the 19th century, in the USA, this was a book about opiate addiction in the USA. The standard picture of the opium addict was essentially a bored housewife who didn't have much to do, you know, was reasonably well off, possibly, like, could be at the age where they're widowed. And why are they hooked on opiates? Because their doctors have prescribed it to them. That was the standard thing increasingly for all manner of women's problems in particular, but also in the 19th century, there was this kind of obsession over nervous disorders, which is what we would now basically call having anxiety, having, like, a sense of ennui, depression, a sense of, like, a lack of purpose in life, nervous disorders, opium, fantastic. Then there was this shift because, as well as doctors really overprescribing and it not really fixing the problems, the profile of the opiate user shifted as morphine and heroin start hitting the streets, and it became much more associated not with nice Mrs. Jones down the street, but with lower income, lower class people. So it became a dirty drug, and that's not okay, and we need to like control that. So they start giving the middle class people different things instead, and like they move into the world of like, okay, amphetamines are the thing instead. You'll feel fantastic, amphetamines. It's like we've come full circle, though. This book wasn't written recently enough to take this into account, that it seems like, again, the opiate addict in America is the bored housewife who's being told that her life should be so much happier than it is, and her doctor is giving her all these pills. Round we go again. Should I get on the meth train next time it comes around?
Get on the meth train.
All aboard.
I want a t-shirt that says get on the meth train and there's like Thomas the Tank Engine on meth. What would that look like?
I don't know. You get sued. There used to be like in the old days of the internet, an animated series about Thomas the Wank Engine. And the BBC and the Reverend whoever who invented the character of Thomas the Tank Engine shut that shit down. It was so good. Thomas the Wank Engine with the fat cunt roller.
Okay. I like it.
I hope it's preserved somewhere in the archives of the internet.
It must be on the internet.
It was so good. Pre-Google. God knows how I found it. What was I searching for that led me to Thomas the Wank
I love
Engine?
those parodies of children's shows. There's an SNL skit, I think it's an SNL skit with Will Ferrell's one of my favorite bits of all time, which is called Jingleheimer Junction, where there's these friends with like a different letter representing who they are on their t-shirt, you know, and I don't know, it's like one's unity and, you know, those kinds of things. And they get a new friend. And new friend's letter completes the word fuck. and the host of the show is desperately trying to prevent them from getting in the order that spells fuck. It's so good.
Should check it out. Don't let it happen. But to wheel back to your point, yeah, there's a big problem, but it's not a new problem, of thinking that unhappiness is a condition that must be medicated.
Or something to be avoided. Yeah. I think...
Well, it's a signal, right? Yeah. This is not a great state, so I should attempt change.
If you're unhappy all the time, something's wrong. If you're happy all the time, something's wrong. You gotta remember, the default state is somewhere in the middle. Not feeling is the default. Zen, like the concept of Buddhism is trying to remove all influences of any kind, including ones that you give yourself to achieve true nirvana. And it's not about staying there necessarily, but centering yourself correctly.
And knowledge of it is a powerful tool or sense that you can bring yourself back into the rest of the world with.
Yeah, and most people wouldn't meditate themselves out of happiness.
I wonder if some fuckers do that.
But you could.
You could.
You could decide, no, I don't want to feel happy right now. Let me find my center.
Maybe that's what I do. Shit. The last bit of the Seneca letter that I quoted was, "The secret of such freedom is unshaken confidence, yet men gather together that which causes worry, and, while travelling life's treacherous road, not only have burdens to bear, but even draw burdens to themselves. Hence, they recede further and further from the achievement of that which they seek, and the more effort they expend, the more they hinder themselves and are set back. This is what happens when you hurry through a maze. The faster you go, the worse you are entangled." Kind of dig that. Getting caught up in all the shit along the way, rushing around after one thing and then another thing.
Do you know how to get out of a maze? Even if you're lost?
Is it you keep turning left?
Yeah, put your hand on a wall and keep following that left wall and turning left whenever it turns. You will get out, unless some cunt has created a place where there is a wall that ends, like into nothingness, like an island. Like obviously, if you put your hand on a wall, which is just like a little island, and you keep going around in a circle, you won't get out. But usually mazes are not like that. or at the very least, anyway.
Well, that's a good pro tip, definitely.
Sorry.
Is the equivalent like of how to escape like the maze of unhappiness in life? Signing up to our Patreon. I think that's what it is. Turn left and okay.
But I mean, aside from the Patreon thing, I like that you brought that up, because it is, in a way. If you're stuck, it's often because you're being buffeted back and forth between things that are keeping you in a weird middle place. You know, we talked with Peter Sage about following the river, and I think I brought up the idea of when the river forks, you can't stay in the middle.
Yeah, it's gonna hurt.
You have to pick one of the forks. So for example, you know, if you're being pulled between a career choice and a friendship or something, and you're kind of doing disservice to both of those things by not picking either, you might have to pick, and that might be the solution. And it might be annoying that you have to lose one or the other. It might be but that might be the situation cannot be solved if you don't stay left.
So we're always picking the left path. This is
either or.
I think I prefer left.
And just remember, 2 wrongs don't make a right, but 3 lefts do.
It's good. There's some people who are so scared of turning right, or turning right on British roads, let's say, or turning left on most of the rest of the world's roads, that they will do the most ridiculous contortions to get where they're going, so they never have to do it. I think for some reason I saw a whole documentary about it.
A documentary?
It was probably just an episode in a series of people with OCD problems, and this was one of them.
Fun.
I'm glad we're not them. So I'm finally connected with one where
gratefulness.
I'm glad I'm not that person. I'm really grateful now, and I'm grateful to everyone else who is listening to this madness. We appreciate you. Tell your friends that if you want to hear 2 nutcases do their best to untangle how to live life.
Slowly lose their minds on radio.
This room is too hot. I need to get some nicotine in my system. I think it's time to bring this baby home. Till next time, everybody.
Please be silly, be kind, and be weird.